Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. First, I want to give a shout out to those people who've been leaving nice comments for me and stuff. I really appreciate those. Those make me feel super good. I just want you to know that I do read them and I appreciate them. So thanks for that. Thanks for that. I'd also like to give a shout out to my patrons over at Patreon, and in particular, Danae and Cynthia B, my newest patrons over there. So thank you for joining up. It's your support that makes this kind of stuff possible, so I really appreciate it. Patreon is a place where I offer exclusive content that isn't available on YouTube, so you might check that out. If you don't want to support me in that way, you could buy me a coffee. That's another way you can support independent artists like me. So there's links for both of those in the video description. Check them out. Not required, but appreciated. Another thing that I forget to mention sometimes is I have a website where jewelry is for sale. So I'll put a link up here. You can check it out if you want to, and people who join my Patreon get a discount on my website as well. So check that out. So let's get started on our project. Today I play video games, and one of the video games I play is set in the ancient Greek world, and I really like some of the designs that the Greeks came up with, and they're displayed pretty well in the game. And so I've come up with kind of a Greek-looking filigree sort of thing, and a couple of pretty mother of pearl stones, and I'm going to try something. I've never tried this kind before, and we'll see how it comes out. So stay tuned. So here's the basic idea that I was going to do, something like this. This is kind of a crude drawing that I made of what I was thinking. I probably will put a hidden bail on the back of this general line that goes straight up and down like that. And I'm going to make this out of some different gauges of wire here. But yeah, this is going to be pretty straightforward, just a little detail work on this one. For materials, I'm going to use 3/16 inch fine silver bezel strip. This is 28 gauge for the bezels. The bottoms of the bezels, I'm going to use 26 gauge sterling silver sheet. I think for the outer wires here, and probably the up and down wire, I'm going to use 16 gauge round wire. And then for some of the designs, I think I'm going to use 18 gauge for little swirls, and maybe for the little diagonal things that I'm doing there, I might use the 16 as well. I don't know, I'm still playing that one in my mind, so I think we'll start by making the bezels. That way I can kind of, while I'm doing that, I'll think about how I'm going to do this other stuff and what order I'm going to do things. So let's get going here. Okay, these are kind of pointy ovals, so probably going to start shape a little bit with the pliers. With these, I always leave, I mark them with just a tiny bit extra because I'm going to have to file the second end. And so I'm going to take a little material off. These are similar stones, but I'm not 100% sure they're exactly the same size. So I'm not going to use that other piece of bezel to measure. I'll just measure it around the second stone. I tell you, every year it gets a little harder and harder to see. Remember, I had great vision until my mid-40s. like in a matter of months, all of a sudden I couldn't see to read. And, you know, of course, so I started using readers, which worked for a while. From what other people tell me, everybody's eyes kind of go to heck in their mid-40s, if they're going to go. If you've never seen one of my videos before, I always use hard silver solder, which is the solder that has the highest melting temperature, for silver anyway. And where are you? And the flux I use is a spray-on flux called My-T-Flux that I get from Rio Grande. I'm just going to do a little reshaping. You never want to put the solder joint at the point of one of these kind of stones or anywhere where there's a sharp bend. So I usually try and put it in the middle of a side. When I'm doing this, basically I'm just doing little tiny pinches with the tips of the pliers to flatten out any rough spots. I usually do one side pretty much completely and then I flip it over to the other side. Those look pretty good. A lot of people ask about these shears. These are just little Fiskars craft shears. You can get them at your hobby stores and things. They're great for cutting thin silver sheet. They're not super great for cutting thicker stuff, but you can force your way through it, although I think it damages the cutters a little bit because they have plastic handles, so they can only put up with so much strain. Although, surprisingly, I've been abusing these lately and they're holding up pretty well. So, for thick stuff, sometimes I use aviation tin snips, but they leave teeth marks. Alright, let's put these bottoms on these. Somebody recently asked what flux does, and what flux does is it cleans off the oxides that are on the metal on the surface already, and it forms a coating so that it doesn't form more oxides while I'm heating it, which it does at a rapid pace when it's under the flame. And so it keeps that from happening so much. And the reason we care about that is that solder doesn't stick to silver oxide very well, but it sticks to silver really well. So we want to keep the surface of it to be silver. There, one more. Just to be safe. I always push them up to the sides. They need to be... I seem to remember the guy who taught me used to always lean them, but you don't have to lean them. They just have to be touching both the bottom and the side. And honestly, you don't have to spread them around like I did. It doesn't hurt to do that, but once the solder flows, because we have a seam going all the way around the bottom, it should, as long as you get the entire thing up to the right temperature, it should wick all the way along that, which is kind of fun. Didn't get that one pushed up against the side very well. When you're doing a bezel, it's easy to melt the bezel on top because people sometimes spend all their time focusing from above like this. The sheet is harder to get up to temperature. The bezel is exposed on top, so it gets hotter quicker. So you got to kind of almost avoid the bezel when you're doing these. You see when it does flow, as long as it's in contact, it'll flow all the way along there. So yeah, the bezel itself makes it harder to get the sheet underneath it hot because it kind of deflects the flame from the sheet. That's why a lot of times beginners will continually melt their bezel because they're never quite getting the sheet on the bottom hot enough by the time the bezel starts to melt. So go around it a couple of times, make sure you got a shiny seam all the way around, so you don't have any gaps later on. Nobody wants a bezel gap. How humiliating. Just kidding. When I was a beginner, I had lots of bezel gaps. If any of you ever copy these projects, which I hope you do, I'd love it if you show me pictures of it. You can send them to my Instagram. I'm going to trim these off. I've had a few people show me stuff they've made, and they've done very, very good jobs on it. I was impressed. Okay, we got one for there. We got one for there. So I need to figure out about how long a piece of this 16 gauge I need. So if I cut it that long, it's definitely long enough. Doesn't have to be perfect, just has to be a little longer than we need, and we can trim it down. I just had a thought. Shocking, I know. I think it might be easier if I soldered this part here to this bezel, this part here to this bezel. So I'd be soldering the inner wire on this side and the inner wire on this side, which is the outer wire there. And then I'll be able to shape them much easier. So I think let's try that and see how that works. Oh, I know what I should do. I'm going to solder a straight one off the end of each of these. The sooner you can get, when you have to solder multiple pieces together, the sooner you can get some of them soldered together so there's fewer things moving around, the easier it is to get things to stay where you want them to stay. You get it soldered on there, and then solder the other one on the other side, and then we can just line them up. When you start to get stuff that's all spread out like this, it gets a little more challenging to get it up to the temperature you need it to be. Finessing with the torch. So now I just have to fiddle with these until I get the shape that I want. I think it might be easiest to get these shapes perfect if I solder that one onto that one. And then I can start doing a little more precise shaping. Make a mark site. Pretty good there. I need to cut it off in the right place, hopefully. Now we're starting to get somewhere. I think that's pretty close, actually. I'm going to snip this right in the middle, solder the two together, and then solder those to the sides. I cut it deliberately long so I could gradually snip it down to the size I needed. It'll be easier to solder it onto that one first, and then solder onto that one, and then add those wires once I play with them to where they look nice. My goal really by cutting them was to get this line as straight as I possibly could. That's okay. I'm okay with it. I don't love it, but I can work with it. If you're new, one of the common mistakes people make is, I've only got 4 little solder joints right in the middle here, so it's tempting to just focus right in one spot like that. But if you don't get the entire piece up to temperature, you generally end up melting a big spot right in the middle here and not ever getting the whole thing up to the temperature where the solder will melt. So, hence the heating the entire piece. That's about as good as it's going to get. So now, let's make sure it's all on one plane. So I do not think the way I'm doing this is the most efficient way to do it. The more I think about it, the more it would have been probably better to do this part first and then integrated it with the bezels. But I don't know. There's a lot of ways you could approach this, but this did not feel to me the most efficient way. The Greek looking stuff, I'm going to do some little swirls and then just some little bars. So I need like 1, 2, 3, 5, 6-ish of those little swirls. It's a little 18 gauge. Let's try about that long and see how long that is. So it's about a little more than 3/4 of an inch, or if you're a metric person, 2 centimeters. I'm going to take my little round nose pliers, a little loop on the end here. Let's see how I did on the size for that. It's got to fit between these wires. I think it should be a little shorter. That's probably a good tip to remember. Is always cut an extra one of the length of wire that you're using if you're going to be making multiple things of the same length. If you screw one up along the way, you'll have something to measure with still. These always twist sideways when I'm trying to make them, so let's flatten them back out. I feel like that size a little bit better. It's just a little shorter. So let's go with those. I'm going to cut another 4 or 5 of these. Oh, I forgot. I actually cut this out of the middle here. So symmetrical. I think I'll start with these 3. Get them lined up pretty good on that. Well, let's try it and see. I'm going to use a little bit smaller pieces of solder for this because I don't want to get big globby messes in there. Making sure I have solder joints in all of these. So far, so good. I'm just going to make little V's. Let me see if I can. I might have to use 18 for that. I was going to originally use this thicker stuff, but you can make sharper angles in something if you file at 45, or I'm holding the file at a 45-degree angle, but it creates a 90-degree notch on the side. Is that kind of what I had in mind? That's kind of what I have in mind. Do one with 18 gauge and see how it looks. I think I like the smaller one better, so I'm going to use 18 gauge. Okay, I'm going to figure out some sizes here. Put a little single one going that way on the end. Let's start adding the V's now. All right. I think we're pretty much done except for I need to put a bail on the back. I'm going to go ahead and cut this off. I like using this, I think it's a 12 gauge half round. I'm putting the round side on the inside. So I end up with something kind of like a half circle. And I can straighten it out a little bit with the pliers because it's not perfect. I'm just going to try to file the bottom flat. Ish. This is where one of these guys comes in handy. This is called a magnesia block. What it allows you to do is push your piece into the pad like this. That way, my components won't fall off then. And what I should be able to do is just I'll put a little solder on the end of either of these, and then I'll just heat the whole thing and then I'll plop it right there. I will likely do much of the polishing before we set those stones because mother of pearl is softish and I don't want to scratch it on the wheel. the solder is already attached to this, so what I really need to do is get this thing up to temperature before I plop it down there, so that when the solder touches it, it just flows and sticks to it. So hopefully that's on there straight. Alright, so that's in the pickle. We'll come back in a few. Okay, after dinner and some polishing, I cut some tag board to raise the stone to the appropriate level. At least I probably put too much in there because I usually do that so that I can, it's easier to get them out when they're not pushed in too deep if I misjudged. That looks about right to me. So with me, some people use what's called a bezel pusher, or bezel rocker, or a burnishing tool, or all of the above. You can get by with just your pair of needle nose pliers. The flat side here works great for pushing in your bezel. I start by going straight in. I'm just trying to get rid of any excess space. And then start to kind of roll it over like that. I'm using quite a bit of elbow grease here. Okay, so now I'm going to do a little burnishing. For burnishing, you can use the smooth outer part of the needle nose here, or chain nose, whichever you prefer to call it. Do the same thing here, straight in. Okay. So I might have to do a little bit of final cleanup with where I did the burnishing on the top there. But generally that's done, and I think it came out okay. I like the overall design. The execution of it was I did okay. So I would probably do that again. I might make some slight changes, but overall I like it. I wasn't pleased with how the symmetry of here is not perfect, but you know, it's art, right? Okay, well that's how you do the two-stone, I'm not sure what we're going to call this. Thanks for watching the video. I appreciate you doing that. Before you leave, if you'd make sure to hit the like button, that helps me out a great deal. And if you I wanted to re-mention the Patreon and the Buy Me a Coffee links in the video description if you care to support me in that way. But either way, I hope you enjoyed the content. Feel free to share it around and put comments in the comment section. And check out some of my other videos. I look forward to hearing your input. So take care. Happy silversmithing.